Yeah, this is the C-Town Rivals podcast. Each and every week we get after it during football season. We bring you notes, news, scores, opinions to a certain extent, but the one thing we like to bring you is facts. I mean, college football is big, obviously, but shows where my mind is, but high school football, that is why we're here. And it's the first time we've been together in a while, and it's the first time that all of our teams have played. No bye week, 6 wins and 2 losses was our collective record, and we've got some rankings to talk about. We definitely will. We're optimistic that everyone can see some action in November. That would be nothing short of fantastic. And of always, I've got my guys with me. I got Adam Beadle, who is going to be the founder of something in the future. We don't know what yet, but he is definitely on the horizon of doing some really big things. And we've got the founder of Arizona Varsity and, of course, C-Town Rivals. That's Ralph Amsden. And, guys, as you know, I always like to start with a off-the-wall question. A lot of times it's sports. Sometimes it's pets, like it was last week. Shout out to my guy Leonard, the official dog of the podcast, as he is over at Seton Catholic. But Ralph, let me ask you this. Flash it back to, honestly, whatever year. I'm truly not sure. Your first NFL game, who were the participants and what stadium was it in?
It was in Sun Devil Stadium. So
Okay.
that should give you one of the teams.
Absolutely.
I am going to give you a couple of members of the other team and see if you can guess who their opponent was. How about this? Leading rusher and passer in that game was a guy by the name of Anthony Dilweg.
Woo. Wow. I recall the name. My first thought is like Cincinnati Bengals, but I think that's wrong. Wow, Cardinals and
I'll give you another one.
Yeah.
2 quarterbacks played in the game. The other quarterback's name was Don Majkowski.
Oh, Green Bay.
It was.
Okay.
It was the Phoenix Cardinals against the Green Bay Packers the year after Don Majkowski threw for 4,400 yards and looked like he might be a star, and then he never really did anything again after that.
Because I felt they called him, like, after that 4,400-yard pet, they called him like the Magic Man or something like that because of the spelling of his last name. And then you answered my question. I was going to ask you, were they the Arizona Cardinals or the Phoenix Cardinals then? But yes, they were the Phoenix Cardinals.
Yeah, and he threw 27 touchdowns in that season and did not throw another 27 in the following 7 years of play after that. So the magic ran out for him, but I did get to see Sterling Sharp score a touchdown in person, which is pretty cool. I was just a little guy.
Definitely good stuff. Mr. Beadle, your first NFL game.
You know, most of my younger football games I don't remember as well because I was super little.
Okay.
But I think the first game that I clearly remember to an extent was an Arizona Cardinals game back in 2013 against the Lions. And I think I just remember it because there were so many just stars all over the field. The Cardinals had Carson Palmer at quarterback. Rashad Mendenhall was there. On the Lions side, Matthew Stafford was in like his 4th year in the NFL. Calvin Johnson was still in the league. So I kind of get to say I saw Calvin Johnson play, even though I don't really remember any parts of him playing in that game. Obviously, Calais Campbell was on that Cardinals team. Now he's back on the Cardinals, which is kind of cool because that was like kind of one of my childhood guys I watched on the Cardinals when I was little. And then one of the greatest kickers of all time, Jay Feely, of course.
Okay, good stuff. No, definitely good memories. The only guy who I can recall playing in my first NFL game, October 1st, 1989 at Old Rich Stadium, the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots, Doug Flutie. That was the quarterback. And here's the crazy thing. He played for both teams. I can't even recall who he was playing for at the time. I just know he QB'd somebody in that contest.
Maybe both.
Yeah.
All-time quarterback.
I think it was Buffalo. I can't recall. So it was, at that point I had, as crazy as it sounds, I was certainly of age and I was having a few beverages. So I guess that's part of why I don't recall which who he was with. But yeah, I was, I've still never been to a home New York Giants game as a kid growing up. Jets game I didn't go to until late college, not even college, late adulthood, late 20s. So yeah, it's the NFL was just a different type of thing growing up in New York City. And as we know, Buffalo is not even in New York City. It's well upstate. So yeah, that was my first NFL game in upstate New York. So folks, there you have it. That's a little NFL history for the day. But you know what, guys? Let's school them. Let's school them on our 8 teams. And we're going to start off with the Seton Catholic Sentinels. They get blown out by the River Valley Dust Devils 40-6. They fall to a record of 3-5. Adam, I feel this is where the depth or lack thereof is starting to show. They're ranked number 14. They've got an uphill battle, does Pete Walheim's team.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing a team that's obviously struggling, battling some injuries right now. Obviously, the depth, as you mentioned, is starting to show. This is a very young team. And quite frankly, when you get down to the latter end of the year and you've played as many tough teams as you had, you're going to have guys that are going to get tired. Guys are going to get worn out. And that's kind of just sort of the things that happen into the season. Granted, a tough loss to a team that has played really excellent in their region this season. I think Seton is still in a good position to make the playoffs. And I think if you can come out of this year saying you did that, and at least compete to the best of your abilities, that'll give you kind of a good foundational piece to continue to build going into next season. You got a lot of young parts returning. And so I think for Seton, the focus here is just how can we best execute throughout the kind of final few weeks of the year and really set that as a foundation moving forward.
That's fair. And Ralph, last week, we kind of felt that Seton would need to win 2 of their last 3 to secure a playoff berth. This week, they get I'm going to say a below average ALA Ironwood team at home to kind of right the ship. This is a game that they certainly need to have. I mean, because we are optimistic about November football over at 1150 North Dobson Road.
Yeah, just stay the course. This is a tough schedule. This is a tough one. I think to me, River Valley's a top 5 team in 3A. They had beaten their 3 previous opponents before going into this Seton Catholic game, 173-12. So, they've been monsters. What this game told me is that I need to mark my calendar for next year when a junior Corey Edwards is going up against a senior Aiden Montgomery, and we'll see what happens then, because they're both going to be star running backs and 2 of the players that we highlight most at the 3A level.
Absolutely. And indeed, yes, Myron Bluford's team at 2-6. It's a good chance for Seton Catholic and the red and gold to get that victory. And as crazy as it seems, this will probably be their last home game of the season. The rest of the regular season games are on the road. And if they do get a playoff bid, that will certainly be away from home as well. The Valley Christian Trojans, ranked number 2. They shut out the Odyssey Institute Minotaur 51-0. Second shutout of the season, 37 first quarter points. So, Ralph, it was over before it started, seems like. Shooter to Hansel, not once but twice. Shooter to Goldman. Shooter to everybody. He had a good old time on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was talking about on was it Sunday or Monday, where the Broncos scored 33 points in 1 quarter. And people were like, oh, who knew you could even do that? I'm like, well, I did, because Valley Christian did it on Friday night in the first quarter against Odyssey Institute. Very, very cool to see Valley Christian handle business like this, get a shutout, move to 7-1 on the season, 4-0 at home. They're putting together a really, really special season, and I think set themselves up nicely to have potentially what could be their signature win of the season this week.
Absolutely. And Adam, the one thing that Jake Peterson told us early on, this team has speed. We've both gotten to see them at least once. And speed at the 3A level is a difference maker. A lot of times, all right, hey, whoever's strongest wins those 2A, 3A games. Valley Christian is strong, but they've got some guys who can get after it from the receiving and on the run, and that's been a big part of what their success has been.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we saw what Caleb Goldman did early on in the season, but I think the one important part to me, and something we hear Coach Peterson talked about, right, as you mentioned, the speed. I also think another thing you got to throw out there is the size of this Valley Christian team. I think they've got some dudes on both sides of the ball that are bigger than you would typically see total across the field at the 3A level. And one of the guys that I think had probably one of his best weeks, one of his most productive weeks of the season, was Caden Palmquist. And this is a guy that we haven't really talked a whole lot about this season. And granted, he didn't really get into the scoring. But Caden Palmquist is there on both sides of the ball. This is a 6'3", 225 kid that is making an impact, even if it's that explosive plays, getting out on defense and making a big tackle, a big stop. I think getting Caden Palmquist more involved in the game, which is something I think we've seen over the last couple of weeks for Valley Christian, is really going to benefit them as they move into the playoffs and obviously into the matchup this weekend against Gilbert Christian, which is, in my view, a chance for Valley Christian to solidify themselves as that number 2 team in 3A and have that advantage. I think you look at last week, I think that's a big win. Obviously, the score reflects it, but you go into it thinking, this is going to be a game for Valley Christian. They're obviously going to win. And to the extent that they did, I think is important for Valley Christian because it kind of gives you that confidence boost going into a game against a team like Gilbert Christian that has done some good things this season. They've lost to some really talented teams. Valley Christian and Gilbert Christian both got smacked by Ben Franklin. Mm-hmm. So now it's kind of a chance to solidify themselves as prominent 3A conference contenders, get a playoff spot, and for Valley Christian to win this Friday would be huge.
And that's starting to become a rivalry in all sports, on the gridiron and on the basketball court, and yes, indeed, on the baseball field as well. So, yeah, playing Gilbert Christian this week certainly is a nice momentum builder. I fully agree, and indeed, VC is ranked number 2 in 3A. All right, Adam, it happened. ACP, they lose for the first time this season, 35-14 to the ALA Gilbert North Eagles. The Knights' running game was essentially ineffective, but here's what I can say about ALA Gilbert North. Last year, I did a couple of their playoff games, and Isaac Massey and Weston Powell, just really strong offensive players, and they showed out this past Friday night. Props to them. Big reason why their only loss is to Desert Edge. So ACP now has that measuring stick. That's where they need to be.
Yeah, look, I said a few weeks ago I didn't think ACP was going to win out. And looking at the schedule, I think we can all agree that their toughest game moving forward, when we talked about kind of when we were at the midseason point, was this ALA Gilbert North team. Obviously, ACP didn't get a win, and for that, I apologize to ALA Gilbert North because I seem to have underestimated the talent on that team a little bit. And like you mentioned, some of those guys, Isaac Massey, they've got a lot of great guys up front like Chase Groman, who are really powerful on the offensive line. And you mentioned it, ALA Gilbert North shut down this ACP run game. And I think that's really something about this ACP team that we haven't necessarily talked a lot about this season. We've talked about Evan Heinrich and Ashton Sanchez and that connection on offense and what the offensive line has done. But I don't think we've really talked about how important this run game is for ACP. And when I say that, you look at all the games, they've won by a large margin, or the games that they have, won and come away with, it's because they've been productive in the run game. Granted, they're not getting 200 yards a game every single game, but they're working the red zone really well. I think that's an important part about this ACP team, and that has been thankful for the run. There's several games where they've had, multiple scores on the run, and so I think for ACP, it's really defining that run game, especially against the Notre Dame prep team, who is going to be really, really physical. Then again, this is an NDP team that got torched last week by Donovan Dixon and this Cactus Shadows offense. So maybe you go to that pass game with Evan Heinrich and Ashton Sanchez and really work it forward. I think there are a lot of things ACP can pull out from this ALA Gilbert North game and really hone in on practice this week and go into Friday and really play a really complete game against NDP. I think they're very capable of doing that.
Ralph, as we move forward, I really like that Heinrich is back and seemingly is 100%. He's finding multiple receivers. And while, yes, the ground game, very, very important, and we certainly know that, the fact that you have the senior quarterback back under center, that's big.
It is big, and he continues to play mistake-free football. He's 12 pass attempts, by my estimation, away from 200 without an interception. Hopefully I didn't jinx him, but I bring it up every week, so probably not. I think what ACP just ran into is the fact that Ty Detmer's a great coach, put together a very good game plan. And then when your stars show up and do well, like Weston Powell and Isaac Massey, then there's not a lot you can do. And I think this is going to be a big challenge for ACP moving forward, knowing exactly what it takes to compete with the cream of the crop at this level. You can't rest on your laurels of getting that Desert Mountain win either, because they look like a different team at this point in the season as well. So, we often talk about how a loss might not always be the worst thing, because it teaches you exactly what you need to do. And this is a 14-0 second half for ALA Gilbert North, where they just controlled the clock, used ball control, kept the ball away from ACP's offense. And when that happens, you don't have a chance to catch up. So great game plan by Ty Detmer. And I'm sure that ACP wants another shot at this team.
Indeed, the Knights are currently ranked number 4, and they will host the Notre Dame Prep Saints, who are 4 up and 4 down on Friday night. The Casteel Colts, they bounce back with a 55-21 crushing of Desert Vista. Ralph, I'm going to start with you because I know Adam's got a lot to say about T. Smith, and I'm looking forward to that insight. Ralph, last week we talked about the quarterback having 4 interceptions, and you're not going to win too many games when you throw 4 INTs. This week, zero picks. He's got a senior named Brody Smith, who is really good, 5 catches, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This was the most points a Casteel team has scored since they hung 70 on Cesar Chavez in a playoff game 3 years ago, Ralph. Good to see the Colts just get after it Friday night.
Absolutely. The result kind of shocked me, and with Adam being at the game, I can't wait to hear about it. We talked about it a little bit on Friday night, but Smith, the last name, that means maker. You got a couple of guys making plays out there in T and Brody. And so, if this offense is going to have another gear to it, look out. They could, they might find themselves in a position to be playing some meaningful football here.
Adam T. Smith, break it down from start to bottom. Tell us about him and all of that.
Yeah, I think, we talked about T. Smith and obviously how big of a game he had, 8 total touchdowns, which is just insane. But I think some credit also has to go to this Casteel defense and how well improved they looked after last week's game, just really holding Desert Vista to not really get anything going. The Thunder scored 1 touchdown in the first half, then had a kickoff return that gave them 14. And then after that, they only scored 1 more touchdown in what was essentially garbage time. Casteel had their backups in there. But man, what this offense was able to do, Brody Smith, you mentioned him, his ability to get open in space. I think another player that dominates on both sides of the ball, Eric Avila, who has kind of been sort of the untalked about guy for Casteel over the last couple of years. And now that I think the big thing, in talking with Coach Bushman before the game, the big thing for T going into that game against Highland was he just felt kind of rusty. When you don't really hit the field in action for a long time, you got to shake the rust off. And for T, this is a guy coming into a game against Highland where he's never made a varsity start. He played limited snaps on Hamilton's varsity team in garbage time. And so it was really just getting settled in, finding his guys, getting the offense going. I think something that helped Casteel as well is they had Riley Hunt back, who was kind of a bit more healthy in this game. You could see that, he was getting after it a little bit more. And we mentioned it. I talked about it in the spaces after the game on Friday. Casteel is a team that any year could just click and they're immediately going to be a contender. I think the way that Casteel's schedule shapes up the rest of the season is they have a chance to potentially push their way up the 6A rankings and really get into a good seeding position for the 6A playoffs. Now that their quarterback is in his groove and they've really got a system going defensively, that defensive front It was really talented watching him play. So I have a lot of high hopes for what this Casteel team can do down the stretch in this season and going into the playoffs, assuming that they're going to get a pretty good seed.
Ralph, and I want both of you guys to kind of chime in. Right now, Casteel is seated number 14, and you figure the top 12 make the Open. I mean, I'm with you, Adam, in that, yes, they could push their way into a top 12. I mean, a couple things may have to happen, but at the same time, it's not far-fetched for, at least initially, for them to finish 11 or 12. And yes, as we know, the way it's formatted this year, if you do falter in that first round, you bounce right back into the regular 6A playoffs. So, yeah, Ralph, I'd say the Colts, and then I'll get your thoughts, Adam. The way things might line up, the Colts are in a really good position.
I agree. And for that to happen in year one under Coach Bushman is very encouraging because like ACP, maybe not, championship runner-up followed by starting 7-0, but to switch coaches and be able to scaffold on the fact that you were a quarter finalist at the 6A level last year. So, and would potentially have the ability to maybe win an Open game this year. It doesn't mean what it used to mean, but it means something. It means you've got a playoff win, and to go back-to-back years in 6A with a playoff win would be phenomenal. It'd be such a huge launching off point to a team that Adam Beadle has talked about repeatedly is probably 2 years away from being really what its final form could be. But if you're starting out from being an Open playoff game winner, what is it that you can be? I think it's pretty scary for other teams in the East Valley.
And Adam, indeed, they're 3 and they take on the 3-4 Corona del Sol Aztecs, and assuming things go the way they should, I mean, that's another win. So yeah, I like what this team is doing. And one thing we said, Bushman is always going to have his team prepared.
Yeah, they face up against a Corona team that's had its struggles this season on the road though, and then you've got back-to-back home games against Queen Creek and ALA Queen Creek. And Queen Creek, a team I saw last week that obviously doesn't look the same without Tate Reynolds. I think they're a different team, and based off some of the stuff I'm hearing, it sounds like Tate is probably going to be back this week. So have to assume that Reynolds is going to play against Casteel. So that'll be a great challenge for this Colt defense. And then you're going to face up against an ALA Queen Creek team who, quite frankly, is in the exact same position as Casteel. They're a team that had an incredibly rough start to the year. You go 0-5. Now ALA Queen Creek's won its last two straight, and they look like a completely different team. So I think it's going to be an exciting matchup just to see two teams that want it just as much, because ALA Queen Creek's a little bit farther down the ladder than Casteel in these 6A rankings. They're at 18, but with their strength of schedule and with the teams that they play down the line the rest of the season, they are wanting to move into that potential open play-in spot as much as Casteel does. So I think that game at the end of the year is going to be a really fun, competitive game between two teams that look completely different than they did at the start of the season. And really, again, it's just a testament to the job Rich Edwards has done, kind of rebounding his team, especially losing their offensive coordinator, and Casteel with Coach Bushman in his first year coming in, taking charge of this program, and just really getting his guys going and rallying them together and trying to figure out what they can do. And also a big piece for Casteel, spoke with Bryce Greer. He's going to be back this week for Casteel, so that'll be a huge boost for
that's big.
Line.
Very big.
So it's going to be I think it's going to be fun to see what this Casteel team, like Ralph said, is capable of doing, and what they can prove to be capable of doing in the years to come.
A lot of fun and interesting football to be played in the East Valley over the next few weeks. A lot to be determined. The Perry Pumas, they're currently ranked number 12. They improved to 4 wins and 3 losses. They blow out Westwood 48-7. Adam, the Pumas scored early and often, and they seemed like they took no prisoners in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And got to shout out Kael Snyder, just announced his commitment to Boise State on Sunday. He's the first prospect in the 2027 class in the state of Arizona to make his commitment. And he really seems sold on what Boise State is doing, and they're going to be a future Pac-12 school. And so it's going to be really fun to watch Kael Snyder potentially make an impact early for this Boise State team. And talking about Kael's performance, we talked a couple weeks ago about how much he's really just flipped the switch and has really improved. Kael has scored 14 total touchdowns in his last 3 games, which I think is very impressive to see him do that, or last 4 games, excuse me. And so I think this Perry offense is hitting their strides at the right time. Max Windelschäfer, Amos Augustine, their defense as well. They're going to have a big test this week against a Mesa team who then again is a different Mesa team than we saw at the beginning of the year. They have a really physical defensive line. They have an offense that if they're clicking on the right night can be very explosive given the athletes they have on the field. I think this is going to be a good test for Perry on both sides of the ball. Heading into the matchup against Basha in a couple weeks. I think it's going to be a little bit of a physicality preview, but also a chance here for Perry to really make a statement and also be one of those teams that's in a hunt of making that play-in push. They got in this week. Centennial bumps down, Perry bumps in. If you can get a win over a Mesa team that has a lot of momentum going up right now, that could be huge, even if you go in to a Basha game and drop it, or Salpointe Catholic, a team as well that is also in the hunt for that play-in position. These are 2 back-to-back, or I should say these last 3 games this season are big for Perry.
Ralph, yeah, indeed. Adam pretty much said everything that we could possibly say. Save some for us to talk about. But overall, Ralph, yeah, indeed, good to see the Pumas get that statement win, so to speak. They need the blowout win because, yes, they come up short when people are questioning them, and it seems like they're always fighting an uphill battle, but they left no doubt that they were the better team on Friday night, no matter who they played.
Yep, and Kael Snyder got his name etched in the Perry record books with 6 touchdown passes. That ties him for the most touchdown passes in a single game. And he went off in that second quarter. In particular, they kept him throwing into the early part of the fourth quarter. I think they knew they were chasing a record, but just a fantastic game from Snyder, from Windelschäfer, from the addition of Amos Augustine has made this offense pop. I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can put a game together like this, where the offense is this efficient against some equal competition. I think that's the internal challenge for this team as well. I don't think I'm being overly critical. And the defense played very, very well as well. They held up their end for sure.
Yeah, all the teams that they have left on the schedule are over 500. So this was a big win. And yeah, they've got challenges ahead. But overall, yeah, it's great to see the Pumas walk away with a big win, an unquestioned victory. They did everything right, really, on both sides of the ball. So props to, indeed, the number 12 team, and that is the Perry Pumas. The Chandler Wolves, they continue to roll as they smash the Monsoon of Valley Vista 62-13, 6-1 on the year, Ralph. Menzel, he's doing it. 264 yards in the air and 4 touchdowns, better than 18 yards per attempt. I mean, that's crazy. 18 yards per attempt. Jai Jones, big catches, 4 for 160 in a pair of scores. And also what I like to see is they've got a guy who can run the ball, and that is Chase Ochoa. I mean, I'm big, and we know that, yes, offensively they've got a lot of weapons, but when you get deeper into the playoffs, you need that running back who you can count on. It seems like Chase Ochoa is going to be that guy, Ralph.
Yeah, and it looks like they got some reps for some other people too, because it was a blowout. When you have 7 different players that have at least 28 yards rushing, that's pretty darn good.
Uh-huh.
And his 10 completions to 7 different receivers. So outside of Jai Jones going for 160 and 2 touchdowns. Will Menzel spreading the ball around as well. He was 1 incomplete pass away from giving us 4 weeks in a row of my favorite stat, more touchdowns than incompletions. But he's close. He was really close. Whoever dropped the ball, you really dropped the ball.
Indeed. Adam, I can tell you, after the game last week at Perry, Ty Wisdom was not happy. I mean, it was a 22-point win. One would think, all right, oh, hey, no, he was not happy. During the post-game huddle, he lit into them pretty good. I mean, Saturday's practice was probably not fun at all, and no wonder they came out and scored 62 points. I mean, wisdom, what I've learned from whether it's texting with him, whether it's talking to him pre or post game, he's all business. He is out there to do a job, and that is to get the Chandler Wolves as good as they can be. And right now, they are clearly one of the 4 best teams in the state, in my opinion.
I mean, if you look at it on a technicality, excluding the out-of-state game, Chandler's undefeated right now.
Yep.
They have yet to lose a game in the state of Arizona, and I think, honestly, that's the way you have to look at it. You have to look at the job they've done against in-state teams. They've struggled to run the ball early on in the season, and I don't know if Coach Wisdom's watching this and heard us say, no one's really gotten going and said, you know what, let's give it to 7 guys, and let's get 7 guys going to get into this one. But just Chandler just continues to amaze me at the incredible job they've done offensively and defensively. I think the next 2 games are going to be an opportunity just to continue to really just hone in on their skills, the little things, before facing up against a really talented Hamilton team.
Absolutely. And props to TJ Green, who is the running backs coach over there. And yes, we saw TJ Green back in the day wearing the Chandler Wolves colors. So yes, indeed, I'm really liking what's going on over there. So yeah, they're indeed one of the best 4 teams, because we know Cesar Chavez is not beating them this week. That's for sure. Adam, the Hamilton Huskies, still perfect, blasting Pinnacle 49-13. Adam, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, Jax Sculley, 444 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Roye Oliver, come on, man. 7 catches, 284, 4 TDs. I mean, we're going to talk about their next opponent, but indeed what Hamilton is doing is very, very impressive, and that's an understatement. Montana Duncan, he got his as well. Tell me about your alma mater. They're getting it done on all facets, and I love it.
I think the biggest thing about Hamilton's success right now is it's starting to reach people who maybe aren't usually, in touch with what Hamilton is doing. What I say by that, I was with a group of friends. We all graduated from Hamilton together this weekend. We're just sitting there talking, and somebody, just brought up, oh, I see Hamilton is doing good this year. They've got this receiver that's like going crazy. And I was like, yep, that kid's name is Roye Oliver, and he is now 6 touchdowns away from breaking the 6A record for most single touchdowns in a season. So
No.
Not 6?
2.
He's 2?
He's 6 away from breaking the overall single season record, regardless of division. He's 2 away from breaking the 6A record.
Well, then there you go. Even better. Roye Oliver is likely going to do something absolutely incredible this week. And I think he's also only 600 yards or so away from breaking the state receiving record for 6A, if I'm correct. I think he's got over 1,000 yards right now, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. He's got over 1,000 yards receiving and 24, 23 touchdowns already on the season. So, but back to my point, I think what Hamilton is doing is they're accomplishing the goal of one of their intents in bringing in Coach Dixon as their head coach, was to once again reach the Hamilton community, reach the alumni, reach the people that know what it's like to see Hamilton football succeed. And I think that that's what they're doing. I think they are right now accomplishing several of the goals they had set out to do. And the next one, obviously, is to take down Basha this week. And then after that, is to win a state championship. So I think Hamilton has done just about everything right it could do to point its program and lead its program in the right direction. I got to spend some time last week talking with the players, talking with Coach Garman, who runs the offense, talking with Coach Tuck, and we all know Coach Tuck's been there for a long time, and he knows what it's like to win at Hamilton. And so to hear their perspectives and to hear them talk about how, this is a team that does stick out to them, a team that has, is doing things that a Hamilton team hasn't done in a long time, was in a way refreshing to hear some clear perspectives, some positive perspectives about the direction of Hamilton football.
Ralph, I'll say that Roye Oliver's getting closer to your 30 mark. He's creeping up there. This is just a record-setting year for the Huskies in so many facets.
Are you ready for some of these records?
I am, yes.
The most passing yards in a regular season, previously held by Nico Marchiol, is now held by Jax Sculley. The most passing yards in a single game, previously held by Tyler Shuck, now, due to this game against Pinnacle, is held by Jax Sculley. The most touchdown passes in a season, previously held by Nico Marchiol, now held by Jax Sculley just 7 games into his sophomore year. Most touchdown passes in a game was previously held by Blake Kemp and Nico Marchiol, the combination of the two. One played for University of I believe played for East Carolina. The other played for West Virginia and is transferring out. It was previously 5. That record is now 6, which has been done by Jax Sculley twice. The record for most receiving yards in a season still stands at this point. It belongs to Tanner Clay, who went on to play college soccer, believe it or not. That was 1,248 yards in 2010. That was done in 15 games. Roye Oliver has 1,106 yards through 7 games, so he's basically one good game away from breaking Hamilton's all-time single-season receiving record. Beyond that, Roye Oliver obviously all over these record books as well. One of the records that he beat in this game against Pinnacle is the most receiving yards in a single game, which was a record that stood at Hamilton for the last 22 years. It belonged to Jeremy Tucker. He did it against Gilbert in 2003. That record has now fallen as Roye Oliver had 284 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. And then on a statewide level, it's just getting insane. Talon Arnett set the single-season 6A record for most touchdown receptions in a single season last year at 24. Talon Arnett's about 5 away from breaking the all-time 6A total career touchdown receiving record. Here's the deal. Roye Oliver might catch him. He might beat last year's record and catch him and beat him to getting to the overall 6A record by the end of this regular season. What we're seeing is not something we've ever seen before. I would love to talk about this Hamilton defense, but the Hamilton defense has done a lot of special things over the course of, almost 30 years of that school being open. We've never seen the offense do anything like this, and we got a long way to go. They can't rest on the laurels. Like they have to use this as motivation to keep it going. What they did to Pinnacle was very, very, very impressive, but there's a lot on the line. Think about how ridiculous all these records will be if you end up only getting to 11 games in the season because you lose in the opening round of the open playoffs.
That's true. No, I do think Hamilton has more than 11 games in them, but yes, no, you're right. It's you want to get these as quick as you can because you never know when something can go south. Last but not least, before we talk about the back 2 teams of this podcast, the Basha Bears, 58-7 winners over the Salpointe Catholic Lancers, and they continue to get everybody involved, Ralph. Very quietly, they've scored 114 points in the last 2 games. McDonald knows that there is a lot of football left, and they're just getting it done. It's impressive. Both teams are impressive, and they're on a collision course.
They're good. I think, unfortunately, Adam had some injury news that kind of took a little bit of the air out of this 58-7 win, but we talked about it on this show last week, Brett. Salpointe has not scored a point in the first quarter all season long. Basha averages 28 in the first half. This was a recipe for disaster for Salpointe Catholic, and Basha's defense only allows them 108 yards passing and 11 yards rushing. When you're this deep into the meat of your season and you're going up against the best school in Southern Arizona and you only give up 119 total yards, that's a really, really big deal. A really big deal. That means that this defense is going on all cylinders right now. Josh Gaines and Noah Roberts only had to touch the ball 8 combined times or 10 combined times. I forgot that Joshua Gaines had a couple of receptions in this game. But when your two main offensive weapons only have to touch the ball 10 total times and they get to take a long rest, that's a really, really good sign, because this Basha defense, Mason Lewis, all of them have just been monstrous this year, and I'm as excited as anyone else for what we're about to see this weekend.
Absolutely. And yes, I mean, Adam, I know you've got some news. I'll break part of, well, it's not even breaking news necessarily. So I sat with Dejan last night in his house. We watched game 7 of the ALCS. We watched the Seahawks and the Texans. So yes, he will not be, he won't be playing, but he did want to give a shout out to Trent Williams. That's a guy who he looks up to from a NFL standpoint, who has had a lengthy career. And we hope Dejan has a very lengthy career, but yeah, it's a collision course, Adam.
Yeah, it's a bit of a blow for this Basha offensive line, Dejan. And credit to Dejan for coming in just about 3 weeks before the start of the season, really getting together with his offense really fast. It was also super cool to hear, I'm talking to Brody Veers at the beginning of the season, just how quickly they were trying to get him acclimated with the team. And with Brody was telling me there was one day where he just picked them up and they just went to the mall and they went shopping and they went over to a buddy's house and just went swimming. And so those are the things you love to see and you love to hear kids talk about. It's just the things they do outside of football, just to gel with one another and be not only great teammates, but great friends as well. And so
when they're not on their phones.
Yeah, when they're not on their phones. Although sometimes, they might be doing it through the Xbox or through the PS4.
Yes.
But it's praying for Dejan. Hope, we can get him back, but can't confirm, he will be out for the game against Hamilton. But I think the big storyline here is how Basha's defense prevails through the rest of the season. We've talked about, the firepower that this Basha offense has. But this defense as well, especially getting Mason Lewis, I think he has been just the biggest part of this Basha secondary in the second half of the season. And I expect him to probably have his biggest game yet against Hamilton on Friday, which I'm sure you want to dive into.
Sure. I mean, I'll say right now for myself, I think and this is not a prediction, but I'm just going to say right now, for me, Edge Basha. I say that because of the experience factor. I mean, Jax Sculley is nothing short of amazing. We have talked about him since media day. We definitely have, for justified reasons. But he's a sophomore. Brody Veers is a senior. I look at a Mason Lewis, a senior. I look at the stars on this Hamilton team, and they don't have the amount of game experience because the Bears have been in the finals 2 of the last 3 years. The year they weren't in the final, they were in the open semifinal against a very talented Centennial team. The game being at Basha certainly doesn't hurt the Bears at all. So I will just say for me right now, it's edge Bears because of some of the intangibles, because of that experience, and they've been in those bigger games. So it's like, and the one thing I'll also say with Hamilton, I don't necessarily know if they can out-athlete Basha, if that's even a term. I mean, yes, they can blow past a lot of teams on their schedule. For Basha, they're going to have some type of scheme. And not that the Huskies offense and defensive coaches are not capable of that. They sure as the heck are. But this is going to take a little bit of game planning against Hamilton because Basha is very, very strong. They're very deep, and clearly this is the best team that Hamilton has played all year. And obviously the same can be said for Basha, but I think that's where my edge is right now, the Bears, because the players have a bit more experience and Hamilton can't out-athlete Basha. That's my take. Either one of you guys.
No, I just think defense wins championships. And so I think if we're all going to be ranking Basha ahead of Hamilton every single week, then mentally, in reference to the Arizona varsity rankings, then mentally you're saying that they have the edge. And so, I look at this Basha team, and the reason I give them the edge is they have played 7 games this season. They are averaging 1 point given up per first half. One team has scored a touchdown against them in the first half this year, just one, and that was Williamsfield. And so, we're going to know right away If we'll know if Hamilton goes out, puts 14 on them in the first quarter, then we'll know this Hamilton team's different. And I reserve every right to change my mind based on evidence. But as it stands right now, I think that Hamilton's about to face a level of pressure on the passer that they have not seen yet. And I think it'll take them a minute to adjust. It doesn't mean I think Hamilton's going to lose the game, but I do think Basha is going to come out and punch him in the mouth first. And what I can't wait for is how Hamilton responds to that.
That's fair. No, very good assessment. Adam?
Listen, I think there's so many lights in this game. Obviously, with it being nationally televised on Max Preps, I think the stadium pulse, to put it in terms, at Basha is just going to be unreal. I know this is a game that both teams have had circled on their calendar all year. And I think you both make a great point. I think the biggest thing you have to look at going into this game is the experience factor. It's the fact that we have a Basha secondary who, when they were, freshmen, sophomores, were already starting together on varsity, right? I think about guys like Trey Knox. I think about guys like Caden Smith. I think about guys like Eli Kramer Cronin. I think about guys who made an impact after transferring from Hamilton, like Dante Bruley, and newcomers like Landon Wade, who have already made an impact. And then obviously the guy I think will be the most key in this game for Basha is Mason Lewis. Ralph's absolutely right. This is a defensive force that Hamilton has not yet faced this season. I think they maybe would have faced something similar to it had Elijah Carruthers played for Centennial in that game. Hamilton had struggled in back-to-back weeks against Brophy and Centennial to score early. And against Pinnacle, they finally did that. So it's really going to, I think the team that wins this game is the team that starts hot, because both of these teams at times this season have struggled to get things going offensively at the beginning of the game. And for most of the season, both of these teams have really been, end of the second quarter, middle eight teams, I should say. They've really dominated the middle eight. I think whichever team can do both, which is start out hot, dominate the middle eight, and put most pressure on defensively, is the team that is going to win this game. I cannot wait to go to this on Friday. I think the environment is going to be unreal. The real question is, will the lights be too bright for Jax Sculley? I think that's the big thing you got to look at, the pressure he's going to face. But if this is something where, he walks in and like he already owns the place and we do see an upset on Friday night, I think we are going to be talking about this game for a very, very long time.
Sure, it'll be good stuff. It will be very good stuff. Two extremely talented teams. This may be just the first of two meetings between these two teams over the course of the year. Both teams is we feel. Here's a question for you guys. Assuming nothing stupid happens, is the top four locked in already? I feel it is, meaning I think even if Hamilton happens to lose to Basha and Chandler, I still think they are one of the four top seeds. I think, and if Basha happens to, I think we're locked in with that.
I think Hamilton's in for sure. I think Basha's in for sure. I think Liberty's in for sure. I think Chandler, if disaster befalls them, they could be on the outside looking in.
Right. Meaning,
based on the system in place, I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world for them. But I'm sure they want the challenge of playing against the best of the best.
So a 9-1 Chandler team, or better yet, an 8. If Chandler were to lose to Hamilton, Chandler's still a top 4 seed, probably.
Most likely.
I think Chandler still will be that number 4 seed, only because you look at kind of Red Mountains, assuming Red Mountain wins out, their strength of schedule isn't necessarily to the same caliber as Chandler the rest of the way. And so even if Chandler loses to Hamilton, I just don't see a world. Granted, to be honest, I don't see a world if Hamilton loses to Chandler that Hamilton would even move farther down than 3. I still think that Hamilton would hold that higher seed over Chandler if they beat Basha as well, right? It all depends on the whole thing. But I think whichever way you want to look at it, 1 through 4, Those are your top 4 teams. How they'll end up being when it comes to making the bracket, who knows, just based on the results. But I just don't see a world where there's another team that jumps any of those top 4.
And I am totally good with that because 3 of them are from the CUSD. So that is nothing short of awesome. Before we talk about 2A very, very briefly, next week, folks, we'll be at Podworks Studios. Definitely looking forward to reconnecting in person with Adam, seeing Ralph on the big screen, and just being involved in kind of how we start to expand our podcast. So, folks, yes, don't forget we will be at Podworks Studios next week. 2A football, very briefly, Chandler Prep and Ralph, we touched a little bit on the whole 2A, and Adam, I'm sure you're just aware of how the things are set. So it's weird. So it's a 9-game schedule, with a 9-game predetermined schedule. Week 10, which is coming up now, you have your teams playing your counterpart, so to speak, in week 10. So Chandler Prep, after their victory last week over Arity Prep, 40-7, I believe, they will play at Pima. Now, I'll say Chandler Prep, at 7-2, and Chris Ader has had a really good season so far. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. This is not an elimination game. Traveling to a 5-4 Pima team, those Rough Riders are good. That 5-4 Pima record, don't let that fool you. So how it'll shape up is the 5 winners of these crossover games, so to speak, they are automatically in, and then it's your next 19 seed. So it is a 24-team playoff for 2A, which is kind of different, but I think it's pretty cool. I think we'll see Chandler Prep involved. They may not have a home game necessarily, but indeed the Titans will get to play a little bit of postseason football. They're led by junior quarterback Cody Dotson. He had a big game, 247 passing. He also rushed for a pair of touchdowns. So go Titans, keep holding it down at the 2A level. And we certainly want to see you guys rise up. And speaking of rising up, the 3 of us, we will rise up together next week from Podworks Studios. And folks, the regular season is starting to dwindle down. As you can tell, we're starting to talk about seedings and teams jockeying for position. And I think we've got our 4 top seeds locked in, 3 from the CUSD, which is fantastic. But again, where will Casteel end up? Where will Perry end up? We've got a lot of football left to play, and we've got more podcasts to bring you next week. He's Ralph Amsden. He's Adam Beadle. I'm Brett Quintyne. We'll see you guys next week on the C-Town Rivals Podcast.